So, hi, and welcome to Torch's Mentor Connect. I'm Jasmine here on the content team at Torch. Each month, we are highlighting one of our mentors to introduce them to the community and to glean some of their wisdom for future leaders. And today, we are very excited to have Tony Puerto, the Chief Technologist at DXC Technology and a Torch mentor for the past 6 years. So, welcome, Tony.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks
Yes.
for the opportunity.
Very happy to have you here. So one of the things that I mentioned to you earlier is, one of the reasons that we wanted to highlight you and that you were nominated as a mentor within our community is for the ways in which you embody the Torch value of to be accountable for yourself and the whole, in not only your reliability, but in the ways in which you hold your mentees accountable, which we were actually just touching on a little bit before this call. So my first question to you is, what does the Torch value, be accountable for yourself and the whole, mean to you? What does that
Sure.
mean? What does it look like in action?
Okay, well, let me express that in three parameters, let's just call them. So number one, it means to be my word. And what I mean by that is that I am my word. It means that when I say I am this or I am that, it's a statement of fact and it doesn't change based on the circumstances. So if I say to somebody, I am your friend, I am means I am your friend, even when sometimes I may not like you very much. Or I am for you, even when sometimes perhaps I'm not very happy with you. I'm always for you. To me, that means that is my word, and there is nothing more valuable from my perspective than being my word, being who I say I am, and not changing that based on circumstances. The other thing that I typically think about when I think about accountability is bringing out the best in others. If I do this, it's because there is an opportunity in an individual to be the best that they can be. And so I balance that out with giving the best of myself. So those are three things that sort of lead my list when I think about being accountable. Clearly, ultimately, at the end of the day, accountability also means that you will achieve whatever you set out to achieve, and that people can trust in you, can rely on you, because you know you're a person of high accountability.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I want to circle back to something you said in the beginning, which really sort of like stuck with me, which is about, I am your friend, right? Or I am for you. I am supporting you, right? Which is you said to really follow through on your word, even though there might be some challenges along the way, right? Like there might be something that comes up, there might be a mistake that somebody makes. So I'm curious in terms of like when we're talking about accountability, like we might say, for example, I'm going to get this project done by this deadline and I'm a person of my word, but then there's a mistake and something that happens. And so how do you, encourage your mentees to sort of work with that uncomfortability and being a person of their word, and also being able to acknowledge when there is a mistake and when they have to sort of adjust their word, right? Like when they have to sort of go back to the drawing board. How do you help coach and support your mentees in that way?
Yeah, so normally what I will suggest to people, and accountability goes along the lines of also being a person of integrity, right? Which me, and I think perhaps what it means to have integrity is what I heard one time many years ago somebody say, and that is that personal high integrity is about making promises that are hard to keep and then keeping them. But not that occasionally the circumstances change and it's just not possible to keep your promise. But at that point in time, it is critical and important to negotiate with whoever you made the promise to, a new date, a new outcome, whatever it might happen to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are in a society where we have a tendency, and we are brought up that way, to always want to say yes to when somebody asks us something. And sometimes we overcommit ourselves. Sometimes, frankly, we don't estimate in our heads properly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in order to be able to sustain, maintain your credibility, your accountability, it's important to communicate early and to negotiate a new agreement.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with doing that. You can always propose something new. Or if you know upfront you're not going to be able to get something done, well, you might want to consider not saying yes, and instead of agreeing to whatever timeline somebody else is asking you to commit to, perhaps you can propose a different timeline and reach a win-win kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Do you have any, just in talking about timelines, right? I know that this is something that a lot of folks within the workplace struggle with. I know I've come across it myself, right? Of allocating the appropriate time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you advise folks to work with that in terms of timelines and projects and yeah, allocating the appropriate time?
Well, it's certainly it's a little bit quantitative in some ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the task at hand, there are methods by which you can estimate how long something is going to take you to do. Sometimes that estimation comes from past experience. You've done it before several times, so you know what you're going to be able to commit to. But I think one of the lessons I learned over the years, and that is, this comes from Stephen Covey's book on First Things First, in which he divides the time space into 4 quadrants, a 2x2 matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably familiar with it, I imagine. But if you think in terms of the axis, the y-axis being important and not important,
Mm-hmm.
and the x-axis being urgent and not urgent, right? And where you want to be 75 to 80% of the time is in the quadrant that says that things are important, but they are not urgent.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we as human beings, we find ourselves caught up on that frequently, because especially in the workplace, you find yourself drinking out of the fire hose.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that up. I draw the quadrant out myself. What's important, what's urgent, what's not important, what's not urgent. It's a really, really helpful tool in understanding prioritization and getting things done. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit and get curious about your story and what motivated you to actually become a mentor.
Mm. Well, it seems like over the years, initially it just happened by default with people that that work with me or for me. And I played a lot of soccer. I coached a lot of kids, got a lot of teams, and it just came naturally. But in the context of Torch, the thing that motivated me when I first volunteered, when I first learned about it, and through Everwise and volunteered for it, the things that motivated me to do this, and it's a number of different things. It's not just one thing in particular. But I hope that over the years, I have been in industry for 47 years, and trusting God, I will keep me in it for another 20. But over the years, I have had an opportunity to have a lot of successes, and there have been some failures. And through those, I have acquired a great deal of understanding. And with that has come knowledge, and with that has come wisdom. And so part of my motivation is to help other people, whether they're just beginning their journey or whether they have been in their journey for a while, whatever the stage might be, help them with acquiring understanding, acquiring knowledge, and acquiring wisdom so they can apply it to their lives, whether it's in a personal situation or whether it's a professional situation. So that's one motivation.
So my next question for you is, in working with, a number of people, what do you think differentiates a good leader from a great leader? Is there one particular quality that you see like, oh, I think this is a common theme?
Great leaders are individuals that understand their style of leadership and recognize that there is more than one style of leadership. In fact, there's probably as many definitions of leadership as there had been books written about it. But we can arrive at a number of recognizable styles. And the important thing is not that you can enumerate every single style, but that you know how to adapt your style of leadership depending on the circumstance, and not only the circumstance, but depending on the individual that you are dealing with. Because as we know, we're all different human beings and we all have a different sense of reality. Mm-hmm. And you cannot interact with one person using a blanket approach. Other thing, I think leaders are authentic, right? Are transparent. I think over the years, we unfortunately have not done that very well. Many leaders have not done well. But I think we are in a time and space today where being authentic and being transparent are critical characteristics of individuals that are great leaders. Mm-hmm. Good leaders sometimes don't do that. They're not very good, but they're not transparent. They're afraid to expose themselves. They don't have enough confidence on themselves, or any number of reasons. I think great leaders hold people to a high standard. Mm-hmm. I mean, we cannot say that, there are times, as I heard a lady say one time, a friend of mine says, I am a pretty easygoing kind of leader, but I play hardball when I have to. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to hold people to a high standard, because if we don't, depending on the circumstances, it could mean harm to themselves. It could mean their own failure. So the other thing, great leaders are pretty good at producing breakthroughs. Breakthroughs are situations in which, especially when there's been a breakdown, and there's a breakdown because action has ceased to exist. And I think great leaders are individuals that can help others and with themselves produce breakthroughs, new things, innovation.
Thank you for sharing that. I think a common theme I was starting to hear throughout it is this level of awareness and emotional intelligence, right? Being able to adapt the styles, which I'm so glad that you mentioned. We actually wrote a piece recently on 10 leadership styles you should know about, which we can link to for folks, in learning how to discern, right? What situations, what particular people need a particular approach, and then being able to have the toolkit and awareness and adaptability to be able to, take on one leadership style for a particular situation and then to adapt. Also really glad that you touched on this note of transparency and authenticity, and really glad that we're starting to see leadership trend in that direction, right? Because I know that has not previously been something that has been something that folks were striving for, right? There was a lot of fear around being transparent and being authentic and trying to save face. I know it's something that we really value here at Torch, and it sounds like obviously you do as well. I know that we are about at time, so I just want to end with one question, which I'm excited to see which book you pick. But what is one of your favorite leadership books?
Well, you probably already guessed one already.
I'm assuming I might know, but I would like you to share.
Yes. No. Well, Stephen Covey, in addition to highly effective 7 highly effective principles for highly effective people, he wrote a book called Principle-Centered Leadership. And that's one of my all-time favorites. But if I may offer another one of the very first books I read on leadership, which I found fascinating at the time, this is back in the probably was in the mid 70s or so, somewhere around the 70s. And there was On Becoming a Leader by Warren Baines.
Okay.
And Warren was a professor, I think, at the University of California or some Berkeley. I think it was at Berkeley, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
great.
Yeah, he wrote a number of books, but On Becoming a Leader was one of the very first ones, and that's what helped me figure out a way when I was getting more involved in leading people and leading projects and so forth to pick up some good guidance.
Great. Thank you so much for your recommendations, and thank you so much for your time,
My
Tony
pleasure.
Puerto, one of our mentors here at Torch. And yeah, we will see you soon.
Okay, thank you, and have a fantastic evening.